Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Show. You're listening to the first and only podcast dedicated to the business of pharmacy. Be sure to subscribe to the show via iTunes and leave us a voice comment from our contact section on the website. You can find all of our episodes at pharmacypodcast.com.
This episode is brought to you by my new book, The She, He Says Guide to Mentoring. With one of my own mentors, Dr. David Borst, he and she provide perspectives on how to set up mentoring programs for women. Log on to erinalbert.com/books and you'll find it for sale there. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast. I'm your co-host in 2017, focused on your career development, Erin Albert. More on me over at my website, erinalbert.com. Today, I really wanted to address a topic that I think is important to all of us, particularly those of us that have been pink slipped, laid off, or let go at any point in our careers. And that is a follow-up to a post that I put over at LinkedIn about 5 steps to manage through a career crisis. So today we're going to look at those 5 steps. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks based upon personal firsthand experience, like it or not, around what to do if you are in a career crisis. And by crisis, I mean you've been unexpectedly let go from your position, you were downsized, maybe your company let a whole division go. And that, unfortunately, is not uncommon in this day and age, particularly for pharmaceutical industry jobs, because unfortunately, some molecules just never make it to market. Other molecules come off of patent, and unfortunately or fortunately, things change, as a matter of fact. So I want to give you guys some really good tips on how to manage through this crisis. So if it ever does come your way, and I hope that it doesn't, but if it does, you're completely as you can be prepared for it in making a career move. So let's get to it. The first step that I really would love you to think about is prepare before the actual crisis ever arrives. And what I mean by that is you really need to focus on building both your financial and your social capital. Financial capital is just what it sounds like, money in the bank. And, last year we focused on the 5 roads out of retail pharmacy, and the first guest that we had on was our friend Pete the Planner, who talked about setting a budget and setting realistic expectations for yourself on how much you actually need in terms of income to live. And that's not unlike what we're going to talk about tonight, in that you need to save for a rainy day. And as Pete mentioned previously, you need to have a rainy day fund set aside for a certain period of time. If it's 3 months, 6 months, or even up to a year's worth of money in the bank to cover your expenses. So if for some reason your job went away, you'd still have income to cover your expenses. So that's the first part, the financial capital that you need to start amassing before any career crisis comes your way. Now, the other part that I don't hear a lot of people talking about is your social bank account. And what I mean by that is the network that you have in your professional life, in your career. So those are people that you're connected to via work, via LinkedIn and social media portals. These are people that you know through trade associations, through external or professional development groups, things like Rainmakers or any kind of professional networking chambers of commerce, for example, any kind of professional groups that you belong to, both inside your profession as well as in the broader community in which you live. It's really, really important to save your social capital just like you would your financial capital. And what I mean by that is what we talked about with actually Hazel Walker in the same series that we talked about last year out of retail pharmacy, and that is givers gain. And so you need to foster, build, and stay in touch with your social capital, your personal and professional networks. So when you do have a crisis, you can reach out to them, and hopefully you've got enough capital socially saved for a rainy day, and that they can help you when you need the help, and hopefully you're helping them when they need the help. So for example, if you have a friend that's in your network that you're professionally related to, and they suddenly have a career crisis, what are you doing to help them? Because if turnabout ever happens, you want to be able to say that you helped that other person when they needed it. Therefore, we'd hope anyway that karma would kick in and that person that you helped would in turn help you. And that's really the kind of notion behind Giver's Gain in building your network. And as Hazel said, your network is your net worth. So I think that's really important. And you really want to build your network inside your company that you work for. You want to build it outside the company in your similar industry. And then most importantly, you want to build your network outside of your industry. Because a lot of networking research shows that when you need a job, your second degree connections tend to be your best bet in getting you your next gig. And second degree connections are people that maybe you don't know very well directly, or they're a close friend of a friend that you have in your network. So it's really important to build, again, both your financial and your social capital when you least need it. And that means when you're already in a job, you need to work on building both of those for the rainy day. So that's the first step to avoiding a career crisis. The second step is to spread out your work. And what I mean by this is this kind of phenomena of being a multi-patient. And yes, that's a word I made up, but I think it's really true in that professionals now who are truly savvy, who are leaders in whatever profession they chose, actually are doing a lot of different things. They're not just doing one day job anymore. And I tell students that I precept now, and I've always told them this, to never put your career eggs in one basket, especially if you think your career is safe, if you work for a very large company, or you think your particular job is insulated from the rest of the universe when it comes to career development. And I would say pharmaceuticals are definitely part of this. So even though we think as pharmacists that we've chosen a safe, quote unquote, profession, pharmacists get laid off all the time, just like everyone else. And so try to break through that kind of false sense of security by working part-time, moonlighting at night. So for example, if you're in industry, ask your employer if it's okay to work part-time in the evenings as a staff pharmacist, either at a hospital or a retail setting. Maybe that means writing on the side as a contract writer. Maybe that means having your own thing on the side. Maybe you love to make jewelry and sell it on Etsy. Or maybe you're into antiques and you like to sell it on eBay. Those are all examples of having a side hustle and doing something on the side in addition to your day job. And I know how hard this step might be at first, especially in this age of trying to do more work with less people and less resources in our day jobs. However, what are you going to do if that day job suddenly goes away? That's why I think it's monumentally important to have a side hustle. So step 2, spread out your work. And, whatever that looks like for you in terms of your personal and professional passions, of course, never violating any, policies that your day job employer has about moonlighting. Aside, it's really important not only for your own professional development to have those side hustles, but I think in many cases they can lead to your next full-time day job if for any reason you suddenly find yourself in the position that you need a full-time day job. Step 2. Step 3 is to be aware of what's going on in the wider world around you. We all get stuck in our little burrows. We sometimes don't pay attention to what's going on in the broader world around us. And this could really generally hurt us when it comes to being blindsided by the loss of a day job. And so I argue here that we all need to pay attention to what's going on in the wider world around us. That means watching the news. That means staying relevant. That means continuing your education. Not hard for pharmacists to do since we have to do CE anyway. But nonetheless, we constantly need to keep learning out there. Again, pharmacy is a nice profession in that it lends itself to learning more all the time. New drugs, new ways of providing medication therapy management, new ways of serving our patients, but also looking at the broader world around us, things like technology, informatics, what's going on in terms of dispensing of drugs. I think these are all things that we have to keep our eyes on professionally. There's a lot of arguments out there that one day our pharmacy drugs will be coming out of a vending machine. If that's the case, what will pharmacists then do? So I think it's really important to stay apprised of what's going on in the broader world around us. So everything from, again, watching the nightly news to staying apprised of new educational opportunities for us. Don't be afraid to go back to school either. I've seemed to have done that pretty much every decade of my adult life thus far. And even though I thought I was done with school every decade, I still ended up going back, and I am glad and grateful for those situations. The example I gave in this particular bullet was the buggy whip maker when the automobile industry came along. You could have been the best buggy whip maker out there of all time. However, if the auto industry was going to consume the way that we transported ourselves in this country as it did, I think the other buggy whip makers that kept their eye on the broader picture probably got out of the industry and reinvented themselves much faster than the best buggy whip maker that was only focused on making great buggy whips. Step 4, be ready at a moment's notice for a new adventure. And I kind of love the way that I phrase this because you never know where your next adventure is coming from. So, some families have disaster programs or plans if, heaven forbid, something happened to their home. What if you had a plan for a mystery trip or had a plan for whatever new adventures that you really like to bring into your life? And part of that is your own career development. So what I mean by this step is have your resume updated all the time. Set aside a time, maybe once a month, once every other week, to just update what's going on with your resume, take a look at it, see if anything needs to be tweaked. Same thing with your social media profiles. So LinkedIn is probably just as important, if not more important, than your resume these days. Again, set aside time once a month or once every other week or so. Go out and see what's happening with your profile and make sure it's tight. I know right now, as I record this, LinkedIn is changing its format, and I will reserve comment as to whether or not I personally am enjoying the changes. But nonetheless, I think it's really important to dig into your LinkedIn profile, make sure it is top shelf, it is accurate, and it is ready to go at a moment's notice, in addition to your resume. That's step 4. So the 5th and final step is that final email that you should start sending once you do, heaven forbid, get that pink slip. If you are faced with being let go of your position, I think the first thing you want to do is celebrate all the success that you had within that position while you were in the position. The second thing you need to do is take a break and don't panic. I think a lot of situations where people pink slip, the first thing they want to do is panic and send out a broad email to everyone in the community to let them know that they're looking for a job and they need one yesterday. That's really the last thing you want to do. You want to take a little break, regroup, go back to your LinkedIn profile, go back to your resume, Even think about your own strengths finder, all those tests and assessments that you've done on yourself over the last few years, and think about what your ideal next position might be. Maybe it's not even in the same industry. Lots of pharmacists have moved on to the broader healthcare roles, more administrative roles, in niche areas like medication therapy management, like informatics, like nuclear pharmacy. You could make a major change, but you have to give your brain a little bit of rest. And hopefully you saved enough social and financial capital back in step one that you have a little breathing room to do that. But just take a break and regroup. Think about what your ideal position next might be. And then in maybe a week or a couple of days, go ahead and send that email out to maybe your top 50 professional social connections, either on LinkedIn or you can do it, individually. Attach your resume and really describe and articulate what your next great position might look like or feel like or sound like. Don't get too wordy, but provide at least a paragraph description of what that might be for you. And cover your strengths as well. StrengthsFinder is, again, a great test to kind of articulate, and it seems to be a common language that most people have done StrengthsFinder, so they understand the language of those top strengths. And then you can send that email out and ask your top 50, thank them for, being part of your network, and ask them to help you pick brains as to what it is you should be doing next. And invite them to send it out to others as well. And again, those second degree connections tend to be the places where you're going to get your next gig. It's not necessarily the people that you're very tight with. It's those second string, those friends of friends that might get you your next gig. So that's it. 5 steps. If you're in a career crisis, hopefully none of us will ever get there. I've been there. I've done that. These were the steps that I took when I found myself in the career crisis. And I hope it helps all of you out there as well. May you never face one, but may you always be ready for one in case it heads your way. This is Erin Albert. You can find out more about me over at erinalbert.com. Thanks for listening. Hey, Pharmacy Podcast listeners. I'm working really hard to get you the best hits I can in terms of career development for pharmacy and pharmacists out in the universe. I am researching for a new series that I have coming up in 2017 on the blend of informatics and pharmacy. So if you're a pharmacist informaticist, I'd love to talk to you about this career development series and see if you'd like to be a guest on our show. If so, please feel free to reach out to publisher@pharmacypodcast.com, and in the comments section of your email, please put pharmacist informaticist and give me your story in a paragraph, and we'll see what we can do. Thanks so much, and have a great one. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Pharmacy Podcast. This episode was brought to you by my new book, The She, He Says Guide to Mentoring. With one of my own mentors, Dr. David Borst, he and she provide insights on how to set up mentoring programs for women and provide general insights on how you can get your own board of advisors. Log on to erinalbert.com/books and you'll find it for sale there.